So every once in a while, you come across something that is so bat-ass insane that it almost just defies the imagination. And yesterday, I came across one of those things. Now, I have to thank you guys, or at least one of you, who posted this in a comment to one of my videos. Yes, I do read many of the comments. I don't always read all of them because sometimes you guys just like really piss me off, and I have to protect my mental health too, guys, but I do actually read the comments on a fairly regular basis. Sometimes I respond to them and do all that good stuff. Yesterday, one of you posted the document that we're going to look at in this video, and I took a quick look at it. I haven't even read the whole thing. We're going to do a little reaction, but you're going to understand why I say, at a glance, this document is insane. And I have proof that it's insane right off the bat because I took a quick glance at it, tweeted it out, and tweeted, apparently, people of color go through 5 stages of development, but whites, that is literally what's used in the document, go through 6, as though the human brain differs based on whether or not you are born white, which is flat wrong. That is not correct. There is no evidence to support that, and we're going to talk about that. But I tweeted this out, and it was according to a college. The document that we're going to look at comes from an institution whose sole job it is to teach people. And it was so insane that James Lindsay, the dude who reads more of this stuff than anyone else on the planet, with the possible exception of Helen Pluckrose, he responded, "Jesus Christ, there's something completely wrong with these woke lunatics." So you know, if James Lindsay is saying that, there is actually something wrong with this situation. So I'm going to show you what I tweeted out, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about who wrote it, which is a whole other level of insanity, although absolutely not surprising at the same time. But before we get into that, folks, I've got 20 days left to meet my goal of getting 100,000 subs on this channel by election day. It is completely possible, except that YouTube has been epically screwing with my channel. They've been suppressing a lot of my content. Most of my content now only reaches people who are already subscribed to my channel. And it's not the age restrictions thing, because I've got one video that's gotten the age restriction notification, and that's not true of any other of my videos. So there's a lot of shenanigans going on. YouTube obviously doesn't want to see you doesn't want you to see us having this conversation today. So if you want to stick it to YouTube, guys, then please go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button below. Turn on notifications just to possibly actually get notified when I post content. Leave a comment, share it out to your friends so we can all laugh at these people together, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. All right, so the document that we're going to look at is called Racial Identity Development. And this is a document that was posted from Mercer County Community College in New Jersey. Now, let's just take a quick look at the goals of Mercer County Community College, because generally speaking, I actually think the community colleges are actually significantly better than, your public schools or your private schools, like your 4-year colleges and universities. I think community colleges tend to be much better in many, many respects, but as we're about to see, they are still not insusceptible to woke ideological nonsense. So the goals of Mercer County College are to provide high-quality academic programs and courses and instruction, to offer high-quality continuing education programs, to provide services and activities that support individual student success, to foster a campus climate or culture that celebrates and values diversity, inclusiveness, and respect. And I think we might be getting to the heart of why this document says what it does, to maintain resources that support open admissions, affordability, quality teaching, innovation, and a safe, sustainable campus, and to foster community connections. So I just want you to keep these mission statements in mind as we read through this document. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is that this document was authored from talking about race and learning about racism, the application of racial identity development theory in the classroom. So this document is developed for teachers. This is for teachers. This is for future teachers. That's insanity. They're actually teaching future teachers that children who are white develop in different ways than children who are not white. And that is not true. None of what we are going to read in this document is true. And you're going to see there's not even any sources cited in this document because there are none, because it's not true. They've literally made it up. Now, you might ask yourself, who is the person that made it up? Well, the person who made it up is Beverly Daniel Tatum. Let's look at Dr. Beverly here. Meet Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. This is on her website. This is stuff that she's put out there. Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, President Emerita of Spelman College. So this woman was a college president. Just let this sink in. Let it sink in. College president. Is author of the best-selling book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And Other Conversations About Race. Now it's 20th anniversary edition. So she's been shilling this nonsense for a good long time. A thought leader in higher education, she was the 2013 recipient of the Carnegie Academic Leadership Award and the 2014 recipient of the American Psychological Association Award for Outstanding Lifetime Contributions to Psychology. Dr. Tatum holds a BA in psychology from Wesleyan, an MA and a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Michigan, and an MA in religious studies from Hartford Seminary. Now, I have highlighted here that she's the recipient of an APA award because if you've been following along on this channel, you know that the American Psychological Association has gone full on woke. They've gone off the woke crazy train and are no longer an organization that we should trust in any way, shape, or form. And I'm very lucky because I'm able to speak out against them because I don't need licensure to practice the type of psychology I practice. I'm a business psychologist, therefore I'm not doing clinical work. Therefore, I do not need to be in a blessed licensure capacity for the APA in order to be a professional in my field. But most psychologists are not that lucky. The APA going full woke is going to have a horrible detrimental effect on the field because in order to become a clinician, if that's the type of psychology that you want to practice, you are going to have to go through an APA accredited program in your college, and you're just going to be learning from all the woke faculty member coming together under one roof to teach you all their crazy woke ideas that have no basis in reality whatsoever. And this is why I kind of like being a business psychologist and why I always gravitated towards this area, because it was honestly always the most realistic way to apply psychology. It's a very much a real world field. I'm not like an academic. I'm not like publishing papers and pontificating. I actually do crap in the real world, so I know what works and I know what doesn't. But I suspect that Beverly here hasn't really had that same type of experience, and that's why she is able to author documents like this insane one that we are going to read. All right, let's dig right into it. And guys, just so you know, I do have a little bit of a head cold, so if I look like a little under the weather or I sound crazy, like I'm just feeling a little unwell. I don't have COVID. I don't have it. I have a head cold. I'm like just congested. I'm fine. I don't have a fever. I don't have any of the other things. I just have a head cold, okay? I'm doing my best to get through these videos. All right, let's dig into it. The 5 stages of racial identity development for a person of culture. Preencounter. The individual seeks to assimilate and be accepted by whites. So this woman is actually arguing that the first stage of racial identity for anyone who is not white is that they want to be accepted by whites. No sources. No sources in this whole document. You're going to see no sources in all of it. So she's literally just made this up. The individual seeks to assimilate and be accepted by whites and actively or passively distance him or herself from other persons of their own race. Okay, this de-emphasis on one's racial group membership may allow the individual to think that race has not been or will not be a relevant factor in one's own achievement. All right, so she's just made the argument that the only reason that a person might believe that their race is not a factor in their own level of individual achievement is that they initially tried to be accepted by whites and to assimilate to the white way of seeing the world. Stage 2, encounter. Movement into the encounter phases is typically precipitated by an event or series of events that forces the individual to acknowledge the impact of racism in one's life. Faced with the reality that he or she cannot truly be white, the individual is forced to focus on his or her own identity as a member of a group targeted by racism. So, What Beverly here is arguing, and no, I'm not going to call her Dr. Tatum. She hasn't earned it as far as I'm concerned. But what Beverly here is arguing is that as someone evolves in their understanding of their racial identity, they must accept that the world is a fundamentally racist place. Okay. Immersion. This stage is characterized by the simultaneous desire to surround oneself with visible symbols of one's racial identity and an active avoidance of symbols of whiteness. I wonder what those symbols are. Individuals in this stage seek out opportunities to explore aspects of their own history and culture with the support of their peers from their own racial backgrounds. Next up, we've got internalization. In this stage, secure in one's own sense of racial identity, there is less need to assert the blacker than thou or similar attitudes often characteristic of the prior stage. So she's really focused in on just the black-white racial dynamic, which is what they all do. This is not about persons of color. This is about her assessment of the black experience. Pro-one's race attitudes become more expansive, open, and less defensive. The internalized individual is willing to establish meaningful relationship with whites, well, thank God for that, who acknowledge and are respectful of his or her own self-definition. Dude, how many people have you ever met that are not accepting of people identifying as black? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, with the possible exception of someone like Rachel Dolezal, who is legitimately not black, okay? The individual is also ready to build coalitions with members of other oppressed groups. Well, thank God for that. Now we can start having allies of other people who believe that the world is fundamentally a racist place and they are oppressed. Internalization-commitment. Those in the last stage have found ways to translate their personal sense of race into a plan of action. They have become activists. That is the highest level of racial identity development in Beverly's world, that people become activists. Fantastic. The last stage have found ways to translate their personal sense of race into a plan of action or general sense of commitment to the concerns of their own race as a group. This is sustained over time. Their race becomes the point of departure for discovering the universe of ideas, cultures, and experiences beyond their own race, in place of mistaking their race as the universe itself. Often a person moves from one stage to the next, only to later to revisit an earlier stage as the result of new encounter experiences. Though the later experience of the stage may be different from the original experience. So she basically just said, listen, people go up, down, all around. They experience all these stages differently. Fundamentally, guys, so the concept of reliability is basically anytime you're doing research, you want to make sure you're using instruments and frameworks that are reliable. What that means is that they manifest in the same way consistently over and over and over and over and over again. So what Beverly here is saying is that, you know what, none of these stages are actually reliable because a person might experience them in different ways each time, and we just can't predict that. They might go up the ladder, then drop back down. They might experience it in a different way. She's just fundamentally admitted that her work is not reliable. But of course, you don't know that unless you've gone through training to understand exactly what that is, which is probably not what they're doing at a community college. And that's not a knock at community colleges. It's just a more advanced concept that you don't generally get to within that type of study. All right, so those are our 5 stages of development for people of color. And now we get to go down to the 6 stages for whites. Contact. A lack of awareness of cultural institutional racism and one's own white privilege. So of course, this is our lowest stage, is when white people just don't know how privileged they really are. This stage often includes naive curiosity about or fear of people of color based on stereotypes learned from friends, family, and the media. Those whose lives are structured as to limit their interactions with people of color, as well as their awareness of racial issues, remain at this stage indefinitely. She's just made the argument that most whites are at the very initial stage of their racial development and will just never overcome their own white privilege. I'm going to say this too. Dude, I grew up in Vermont. 95% of the people that I met were white, obviously, but there were definitely black families in the community, and I was never scared of any of them. It was more like they were just the kids in those rooms, they were just kids. I never acknowledged those kids as any different than me. In fact, dude, I remember I took karate as a kid, and the black kids were always the ones I had crushes on, okay? That's all I want to say. The black kids were always the ones I had crushes on when I was a little girl. And I had very limited contact with them, but, to say I'm afraid of them as this first stage, that was crazy, man. That doesn't even make any sense. And I bet most of you watching this that are white or are whites, you probably have similar experiences. Disintegration. Increased interaction with people of color or new information about racism may lead to a new understanding which marks the beginning of this stage. In this stage, the bliss of ignorance or lack of awareness is replaced by the discomfort of guilt, shame, and sometimes anger at the recognition of one's own advantage of being white and the acknowledgement of the role of whites in maintaining a racist system. Attempts to reduce discomfort may include denial or attempts to change significant others' attitudes towards people of color. Societal pressure to accept the status quo may lead the individual from disintegration to reintegration. So again, what Beverly here is actually arguing, and I'll link this link in the description below so you guys can go absorb this crazy document for yourselves. She's actually arguing that most white people never progress beyond this initial stage of racial development, which is, of course, I mean, this whole thing is crazy, but that's literally what she's arguing. My God, these people are nuts. Reintegration. At this point, the desire to be accepted by one's own racial group, in which the overt and covert belief in white supremacy is so prevalent, it may lead to a reshaping of a person's belief system to become more congruent with the acceptance of racism. The guilt, that's probably meant to be guilt. The guilt and anxiety may be directed in the form of fear and anger directed towards people of color who are now blamed as the source of discomfort. It is easy for whites to become stuck at this stage of development, particularly if avoidance of people of color is possible. Okay. Pseudo-independent. Information seeking about people of color often marks the onset of this stage. So this is the stage in which people start reading how to be an anti-racist and white fragility, essentially. The individual is abandoning beliefs in white superiority. Dude, this assumes that people have developed beliefs that the white race is superior, which is emphatically not true. This is not true. She's literally made this up. The only people who truly believe that the white race is superior is people like Beverly, who writes stuff like this that make it seem like everyone thinks that white people are superior. No one thinks that. I don't think that. I'm sure you don't think that. That's crazy and that's racist. Looking to those targeted by racism helps to help him understand him or her. Let me start again. Looking to those targeted by racism to help him or her understand, the white person often tries to disavow his or her own whiteness through the active affiliation with persons of color. Okay, so this is the Rachel Dolezal stage. We've evolved into Rachel Dolezal. Excellent. The individual experiences a sense of alienation from other whites who have not yet begun to examine their own racism, yet may also experience rejection from persons of color who are suspicious of his or her motives. Persons of color from the encounter to immersion phase of their own racial identity development may be particularly unreceptive to a white person's attempts to connect with them. Dude, I can't. There's just nothing for me to say other than this is crazy. Immersion. Uncomfortable with his or her own whiteness. Dude, if you're uncomfortable with the fact that you're white, this is like the last document that you want to be reading. You need to go meditate or do some self-development, because no one should feel guilty for the skin color that they were born with. Uncomfortable with his or her own whiteness, yet unable to be truly anything else, the individual may begin searching for new, more comfortable ways to be white in this stage. Learning about whites who have been anti-racist allies to people of color is an important part of this process. Whites find it helpful to know that others have experienced similar feelings and have found ways to resist the racism in their environments, and they are provided with important models for change. And then lastly, we get to the autonomy stage. The internalization of a newly defined sense of self as white is the primary task of this stage. The positive feelings associated with this redefinition energizes the person's efforts to confront racism and oppression in daily life. Alliances with people of color can be more easily forged in this stage because the person's anti-racist behaviors and attitudes will be more consistently expressed. She just said that the highest level of development for white people is to become little activist allies. That is literally the highest form of development. This is nuts. Dude, these people are crazy. I will link this in the description below so you can go bask in the craziness yourself. And that's all I've got for right now. I'll see you guys soon.